That will ensure maximum exposure of talent to press.
The strength you derive from your exposure to the
All right, reinitiate the exposure run in the morning.
Radiation exposure. After that, there is a 7-day anesthesia.
And you do understand my legal exposure.
I like full exposure from you, dear.
I've had enough exposure to you working class folks to know what you are.
Get in the bush and nothing more serious than shock and exposure.
Extremely worried about his exposure.
Take that kind of radiation exposure.
It's up like it's a talent contest.
Exactly. That will ensure maximum exposure of talent to press. See, once we go over there and find these guys, we bring them back here,
You're wasting your efforts. The strength you derive from your exposure to the Earth's sun has been neutralized aboard our ship.
Our glass is right here in our chairs until tomorrow. Thank you.
All right, reinitiate the exposure run in the morning.
Yes, sir. Reinsert safety interlocks.
Radiation poisoning.
Jonathan, can you turn this shit off?
After irradiation exposure. After that, there is a 7-day anesthesis.
Crown jewels here, Mr. Wayne. And you do understand my legal exposure. If anyone knew what I procured for you.
Listen.
Light to my studio. I need full exposure.
Oh, I like full exposure from you, dear.
Fixated on socioeconomic status.
I've had enough exposure to you working class folks to know what you are.
What are we?
A lost cause.
We get in the bush and nothing more serious than shock and exposure. Extraordinary.
Partners. Some people are extremely worried about his exposure.
Will you crazy ants? Return to base. You can't take that kind of radiation exposure. You'll die in less than 30 seconds.
I guess you can say that again.
What's the exposure like?
2 minutes tops, but it's a tough 2 minutes. Daylight during business hours.
Dignity of actually speaking to Democrats. Spare you the exposure and liability.
It's now 0.4 rads an hour, which is considered safe for limited exposure outdoors. We urge all of you not suffering from...
Then the second delivery, I come in with a half meal.
So that's too much exposure. I ain't going nowhere near that money.
You don't have to.
It was their reverence for this lovely flower.
Because long-term exposure to its pollen caused sterility.
Correct, Mr. Bond. As you...
I would like a room with northern exposure, if you please. All the same floor, all close together.
A short while before, you had met with Billette and been threatened by him with exposure of your affair with Madame Grandfort, and that you had taken the first weapon that came to hand and struck at Billette.
It's only a laughing matter.
Indecent exposure is illegal, even in America.
No. Yep. You're right. Picked up the exact same thing, only much lower concentration. Her exposure was recent, brief. He's taken an ace.
From infection, 20% from dehydration. Exposure can kill as easily as a knife.
Johanna knew that exposure meant certain death. She suffered most during the reading of chapters.
Our rules. Our treatments here are most effective when exposure to the stresses of the modern world is strictly limited. Director Vollmer is quite...
Mr. Blair, not a fairground attraction. I think the princess has already paid a high enough price for exposure to the press, don't you?
I don't really like being on camera, actually.
Well, maybe it's, like exposure therapy.
Yeah. No, I came by to give you something, actually.
Beloved gynecologist in Vienna, before they took him away on a morals charge for indecent exposure at the State Opera House, said, and I quote, "Please do..."
By 60%, you're over there celebrating a riot. What we need is exposure. If we're going to beat this thing, we've got to get Briggs to acknowledge.
Will implode, and this bank will be left to foot a bill it cannot pay. Heightening our exposure is the least of our problems.
I agree. We're about to engage Kavina's son.
Me? What's your exposure, 3 billion? Please don't tell me it's more than 4.
What kind of radiation exposure are we walking into?
Nominal. These are just for safety.
So is there any physical...
I believe I can guarantee all your demands. Money,
media exposure, safe passage back to the Middle East.
I understand. You want to be seen.
But I think it really could put him back on the map. The work is good and deserves more exposure.
National disaster alert for all northern states. Continued exposure to the approaching storm is deadly. Remain indoors and take all measures to stay warm. Burning.
Working right under Van Damme's very nose will immediately face suspicion, exposure, and assassination.
We're required to rest for 6 hours on level 4 after exposure to the xenon lamp. So go to your rooms and sleep. At the
What is that, a knife? What am I looking at?
The exposure's off, we'll adjust that. Eugene wouldn't come out and run camera with me, so it's a little too much.
Any idea how serious this is? You have risked the exposure of our world. Not to mention the damage you inflicted on a one